All right, we're going to get our meeting started. So if everyone in the room can please mute yourself, the same as the online participants, that would be wonderful. So we respect and recognize the First Nations within whose unceded lands the village of Kaslo is situated, including the Tagaha, the Snipes and Silks people, and the Indigenous and Métis residents of our community. So we're called to order at 6:08. Sorry for the delay. We were trying to get things sorted out with the technology. Chat is not for public questions, so we will take those when it's time. So we will get started with the adoption of our agenda. If there are no additions, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda for the January 28th meeting, moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? So I gotta watch them, the votes. All right, and the draft minutes, if there are no errors or omissions, I'll take a motion to adopt both sets of minutes for the January 13th Committee of the Whole and the January 14th regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Leafwood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move into council reports. I don't have a written report this time because I was too busy, but I will give just a very brief one, a verbal report, and I'll cover it in the items in more depth in my next written report. So we had I attended regional district meetings last 2 weeks ago, and there are some items that, like I said, I'll report on. And one of them is regarding the resource recovery and a bit of a delay in instituting some of the increases on the fees, just because they needed to reword some things and bring them back. So that will be delayed probably till May. And we had a couple of delegations, which were interesting, and they come because we don't make decisions at the same meeting as we receive delegations. Then any action items that may arise will come up at the next meeting. And I was at CBT meetings on the weekend. Part of the pre-meeting package was to have the opportunity to tour all 4 of the power facilities. So Juanita, brilliant expansion, and Arrow Lakes. And you can tell how passionate that the staff are to work there. There was power facility staff, and there was also the staff member who is responsible for ensuring fish and wildlife safety and ecological items. So very, very interesting. We were able to go into places that a normal tour would not go because they're in planned shutdown. So we were underwater, but not underwater. So it was very fascinating to get that kind of view of what was happening. And other than that, like I said, it'll be in the next, the Chamber of Commerce meeting. I attended that, and there is an individual who is trying to put together the community calendar again, or the events calendar. So he came and spoke and to see whether the chamber would support financially his time to do that. So that will be coming back, and they're also trying to coordinate first aid course for people locally so that everybody doesn't have to travel. So that is, if you need first aid training, go to the Chamber of Commerce website. Any other council members have any reports to provide this evening? Councillor Leafwood?
Apologize for not being there, but I have a cold and fever, so I didn't want to get anyone sick. I
Thank you.
just wanted to mention that the third week in February is Heritage Week, and we're hoping to maybe do a couple of advertisements and to events to remind people about our heritage. It's a whole week long sort of celebration, and this year's theme is pastimes in pastimes. So we're hoping maybe through the ladies auxiliary, we might try and put on the tea again that has happened in years past. And the hospital auxiliary got a book printed of a walking tour of Kaslo that Deborah Barrett wrote a few years ago. So those books are on sale now. We've got a mini version printed. So we're hoping that people will honor that week and respect our heritage.
Thank you for that, Councillor Leibwood. And Councillor Lang, did you have a report this evening?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on then. There are no committee meeting minutes, so we'll move on to reports. Zero Baker, we'll start with the 2024 fourth quarter municipal report.
Mayor Hewitt, so reports provided for council's information, and if any specific questions, please feel free to ask. Maybe what I can do though is provide you my usual CAO report. That's
okay.
Agreeable. Thank you. So we have an open house that's planned for next Tuesday over at Heritage Hall, starting at 6 p.m. and intended to provide an opportunity for the public to interact with council and council get to showcase its strategic priorities, as well as gain any input for the 2025 budget. Today, we had a liquid waste monitoring committee meeting, and one of the topics was the liquid waste monitoring plan, which needs to be reviewed every 5 years and then provided to the ministry. Staff have begun working on the review, and in order to finalize some of the numbers on it, we may require the help of a consultant with professional expertise. So a capital request might be presented to council seeking pre-budget approval, maybe $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, whatever is needed. So you might see that before you get to look at the budget as a whole. And notwithstanding that, staff will certainly provide council with the final review of the plan once it's completed. The active transportation network plan, I have an update for you. I know one of our councilors asked about it at the last meeting and just kind of deferred to the fourth quarter report, but thought I might highlight it for you today. So the plan is expected to be at about 90% by the end of the month, which is any day now. And then staff will have an opportunity to review it. And then the consultant is going to conduct public information sessions. So that would include an open house as well as a survey. And then the plan should be finalized near the end of March, and that would include a presentation to council. With respect to buildings and facilities, you may recall that we're pursuing electrical permits. So quotes have been received from a contractor to remedy some deficiencies in our buildings. And once those deficiencies are remedied, then we can attain our operating permits. So you might see capital requests to remedy these electrical deficiencies that we have. Campground, you may be aware that we utilize a contract operator and that our agreement with that operator is up for renewal. The operator has asked for us to increase the level of service that the village provides. And so staff are planning to seek information from, or provide information to council, and then seek direction at a February 18th committee of the whole meeting. And then once that level of service is decided upon, either keep it the same or make adjustments, then it will allow staff to draft an agreement. And of course, it'll help feed 2025 budget. The regional and local community needs project is still underway. Phase 1 is complete, which included an online survey. Phase 2 is underway, which includes data and technical analysis by the consultants. You might recall this is being done in partnership with the regional district. So when I say staff and consultants, it's all done through the regional district. The village has provided information regarding our land use designations and any anticipated development projects. A workshop with the RDCK board is scheduled for February 18th, followed by a project team workshop, which would include village staff, on February 20th. And in March, there'll be scenario modeling. In April, community workshops. That'll conclude phase 2. And then phase 3 would be implementation and modeling plans, which is expected to be completed by the end of June. And on the report I've given you, there's a web link where you can go find more information. Fire Smart, exciting news. We were able to find a temporary part-time youth Fire Smart coordinator. They've been hired and they're going to work under the guidance of our Fire Smart coordinator. So their first day is coming up within the next couple of weeks. And that position is funded by our CRI grant program. The library, or perhaps maybe this is the new library, we have a building committee. They presented a draft operating budget for the new building to the North Kootenay Lake Shared Services Committee on January 20th. And that was an important step towards determining a funding agreement between the village, the regional district, and the library. And a follow-up meeting is going to occur between RDCK and village staff on February 6th to determine how to proceed. And the last update would be on our pavement management plan. In the fall, we brought on board a paving contractor to assess our road conditions, which included core samples. And they've now provided us with a list of priorities and recommendations and budget estimates. So all of that information is going to be amalgamated with our pavement management plan and then provided to council as information. And of course, you'll start to see the budget implications of all that come up when we're chatting about 2025 budget.
Thank you, CAO Baker. Are there any questions for the CAO either on that is verbal, the reports you just gave, or on the 2024 fourth quarter report? No? From either Councillor Lang or Leafwood, so Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, just a question about the quarterly reports. Are they on our website as well, that anyone can see them? Because I find they're really useful.
They are part of the package.
So they're part of the package for this meeting?
Yes. Yeah.
A supplemental, they might be an item on their own on the website, rather than someone having to hunt through, which particular meeting had it in the package.
We might need to develop a policy because we'll end up with a lot of things, because there's a lot of things that somebody might find of value, but we got to be cautious not to put too many things. Otherwise, it's as of little value as having people search through each of the meetings, but just so we don't end up with a whole bunch and maybe they're there for a certain length of time, not indefinitely. Yeah. But
we can have the most current one on the reports and information page, like with the reports and bylaws.
Right.
And
all right. Any other council questions at this time regarding either of those reports? None. Then we will move. We've got our correspondence. And so that is all deemed to be received. Councillor Leafwood already spoke to a Heritage BC item. And items that I'm hoping that council has had an opportunity to read, correspondence regarding South Beach. And the only other one is the arena. If there's nothing that anyone wants to pull for further discussion at this time, then we'll, Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, yeah, I'm finding, the letter from Ms. Malik, pertinent to our discussion about South Beach. So we could perhaps, when it gets to that part in the agenda, make a reference to that rather than pull it out, speak about it now.
Oh, if there are elements of the letter that you want to speak to, yeah, you can certainly raise them when we're talking about that. All right. So then that brings us, let's see, with their hands up. So brings us to question period. So, anyone wish to be ask a question? All right. So I saw Dawn first, and then Jim. And if you could use if you're online, if you could please use the raise hand function, that would be best. Then I'm more likely to see it. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a question. Is it possible that some councillors are unable to interpret the clear intent of the 2022 official community plan when it states development in the lakefront protection DPA shall be limited to passive recreational amenities such as walking and multi-use trails, natural parks areas, non-motorized pleasure craft launches, and park benches? To assist your interpretations, the South Beach Working Group is engaging a competent lawyer, and action will proceed regardless of whether you follow the recommendations of the CAO.
All right, individual council members don't answer questions during question period. So because you're referencing legal, then we will, I think, cease discussion on this item right now. Okay. All right, and Jim.
Yeah. Jim Holland.
So it's not for a delegation, you're just to ask a question, Jim. So I see a big folder, so I just a little concerned.
Yeah,
that
I'm
you're
only going to read half of it. So the question is regards to the forward law legal opinion that was submitted in this current agenda. And in there's one particular aspect that I'd like to touch on. There's a few problems in my unlearned opinion. On page 2, the 5th paragraph, forward law states, the village's OCP is poorly drafted and does not comply with the statutory requirements applicable to development permits. And their reason, I quote, in particular, there are no guidelines within section 16.434 informing the owner what needs to be done to address the special conditions and objectives defined by the municipality. This is completely false. And even more telling is the lack of guidelines within the section 16.4 noted forward, or that the sections that they quote are in a section of the OCP that's titled guidelines. So what I want to do is just touch on those guidelines real quick. Development permit under the section may not be issued before the other permits are issued by the federal and provincial jurisdictions. New roads and septic systems are discouraged, but if necessary, design construction of roads and septic systems by supervision engineers. Areas for motorized and non-motorized boat launches are permitted if the ramps are located on stable soil. development of the EPA from the Moya Beach, east and south beyond, it has no motor ramps and has amenities such as walking, multi-use trails, negative visual impacts on the development of the natural setting of the views and lakes should be minimized. An environmental impact assessment has been prepared by a qualified professional and needs to cover. These are all guidelines that they're saying don't exist. An assessment of ecological, cultural values, archaeological potential, identification of mitigation options to protect the natural environment, the geotechnical aspects for slope stabilities, measures to maintain or improve the integrity and function of riparian areas, revegetative plan to improve the natural regeneration, design of buildings, respect to Kaslo building design guidelines. Docks should be constructed so they don't sit on the lake bottom. The village may require security from the applicant in excess of the estimated cost of post-construction mitigation or habitat restoration as surety the work is completed. So when this legal opinion states this and uses this is the cornerstone in that legal opinion to go on and build a case that the OCP is not in compliance with regulations because it doesn't specify guidelines to facilitate the development it does. My question is the village unaware of this gross misrepresentation of the facts of the OCP, which is the cornerstone of a legal opinion that focuses on completely dismantling an essential element of visual Kaslo's residents' input into the vision for this community, the Kaslo OCP? And the supplemental question to that, can the village have confidence in the village's own legal consultation that does not take these factual misrepresentations into account?
Like to take that one, CEO Baker?
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So certainly I think part of council's discussion tonight is to consider whether they're comfortable with one, the legal opinion that was provided through the developer, and then two, the brief commentary that's provided in the staff report from the village's lawyer. And for council's information, our lawyer's perspective on this, on the legal opinion, is that they do not agree with the vast majority of the commentary that was made by the lawyer. What they have highlighted for us is that the case law that's cited is relevant, and that's why the staff report only talks about, the case law. The rest of the commentary by the developer's lawyer is rather irrelevant. And so they didn't have much to say on the personal opinion of what the lawyer provided. What they did was draw staff's attention to the case law and reiterated that the information that's in the staff report. So I think to answer the question, it's up to council to decide if you're comfortable with that. If not, if there's more information you need from the village's lawyer, or would like to have a discussion.
So did that address both of your questions, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, it opens up a big, when you look at the case law is not really applicable to development permits. It's about riverfront, it had to do with the river, not the riverfront. And the lawyer made a comment that this information in those legal cases probably transferred over to the waterfront development area. And again, this is where, it's beyond my pay grade for sure, figure stuff out. But I think at least ultimately this comes down to council receiving caution. Like you seem to be bidding over backwards to the developer, and their motivation is a lot different than what motivation for the developer.
All right, so we'll move, well, first I will address a question that is, normally I wouldn't do this, but to clarify for Mr. Woodhurst, there are all 5 members of council are in attendance, 2 are virtual, and 3 of us are in the room. We allow for council members to, for their own reasons to participate electronically, whether they're ill or whether they're traveling, they're still doing their duty by participating virtually.
This meeting's on now.
So, I've got, I see, I had Jesse and then Randy and then John Harris, and then that will bring us well past our 10 minutes. So Jesse, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a super quick question. I'm anxious to hear the discussion and conversation about, the information. And I'm just curious, are we going to be able to ask questions after we've heard what y'all have to say about that? Or is this our only opportunity to ask questions?
No, this is our question period, is right now. Yeah.
Okay. That's too bad. It would have been really nice to have an opportunity to just hear, the update and then have input or questions. But I understand.
The rationale for the timing is that you can ask your questions prior to our discussion in case it has any bearing on our discussion during the business portion of the meeting. It used to be afterwards. So that
okay.
was, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. I'll preface my question by paraphrasing my favorite philosopher, Voltaire, who once said something along the lines of, "It is with lawyers as it is with books. A few good ones make all the difference." My question is, even if, for the sake of argument, it was borne out that the Kaslo OCP is not sufficient to prevent legally the developer from going ahead with this proposed project, I would like to know what would keep the village of Kaslo from politely saying no thank you to the developer's offer regarding the sale and purchase of lands. I could go on, but it's really that simple. Why can't you simply look across the table right now and say, no, thank you. It's got nothing to do with the OCP. It has nothing to do with any law firm's interpretation of the strengths or weaknesses of the OCP. It's a simple transactional question, which the village, surely to God, is completely within its legal rights to say no, thank you to. That's my question.
Okay. Council bases their decision on the information received, and our duty is to listen to both sides and take that information in prior to making a decision. And honestly, we're still hearing information tonight and opinions from members of the public, and we've just gotten a lot of information in tonight's package, which we've all read. So it will depend what the discussion that arises amongst council later during our business portion of the meeting. So it's improper of us to say one way or another what we're going to do at this point.
A supplemental, just to be very clear, Mayor, I'm not asking for that. I'm asking, let me put it this way.
No, I think I understood your question. Yes, we can, if a council member put forward the motion and it was seconded, and after discussion, council decided that they were going to cease negotiations, that could certainly happen. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And our last question is from John.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Harris. I'm a local resident of Kaslo. I was quite intrigued. I recently received my property taxes. I live on a piece of land that's less than 1/4 of an acre, and the valuation of my land was $107,000. If I look at the compensation plan that's been presented in the letter in October 24, it's suggesting that the compensation plan should be $52,500 per acre. It's certainly a piece of land I would love to own for a prime lakeside presentation of land at that price. My question to you, it takes a slightly different digression. The land in Kaslo is our crown jewels. This is where we live, and we should never, ever give that land away. That doesn't mean we shouldn't support and promote new business opportunities, etc. But we shouldn't give up that land forever. Have we considered approaching the developer on a leasehold basis for this land rather than forever giving this land away?
No, we haven't.
Okay, I'd like that to be a consideration at some point.
Well, I guess the developer has not asked for us to consider that. So, anything else to say on that?
I don't even know if it's possible, because the road allowances are, yeah, I do not know if it's feasible, possible. Could not even comment, would need a legal opinion on that.
All right, well, thank you for your questions. And we'll go back, we'll move into the business portion of our meeting. So the first item is record management bylaw 1310. Recommendation is that records management bylaw 1310/2025 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Oh, no. All those in favor? Motion is carried. People moved around. All right, and our next item is South Beach Park RV Park proposal. Okay. Councillor Brown.
I would like to move to postpone this indefinitely with the following alternate motion to be voted upon. Council does not approve of the land transfer.
Corporate officer moment to put that brought down. Want to reread that, and then I'll ask for if there is a second for that motion.
So this is, the proposed motion is that the matter of the South Beach RV Park proposal be postponed indefinitely.
And was the other a supplemental or a part of that motion?
My understanding was that there needed to be an alternate motion put forward, and that alternate motion was that council does not approve of the land transfer.
Oh, okay, so if your first one fails to get a seconder, then you're.
I actually pulled this right from the agenda from December when we were given 3 options, and the second option was move to postpone indefinitely with the following alternate motion to be voted upon, and so I chose that option.
Okay.
So for clarification, if your goal is to postpone indefinitely, the correct motion would be that the matter of the South Beach RV Park proposal be postponed indefinitely. Full stop.
Okay, and if my intention is to not approve the land transfer, then that would be separate from postponing indefinitely.
I think that if you postpone the proposal indefinitely, that would automatically end discussion around any land transfer.
All right, then I would like to do that.
Okay.
I'll second that one for discussion.
Okay, and discussion, I'll go to you first. Or did you want to add anything as the mover of that motion?
I'm happy to engage in discussion.
Okay, Councillor
Thank you. So in support of that motion, I mean, thing about bringing forward a motion is it allows people to discuss it, whether they're in favor of it 100% or if they see some merit in it and they also see some problems with it. So I see both. I know, there's such an enormous amount of pressure because any kind of action would be like totally distasteful to some people. Like the idea of doing nothing is very appealing to enough people that I certainly feel that pressure, that to do nothing is the best course. And I've heard this from many people. When we started this whole process, the idea of doing nothing certainly was there. We could have done nothing, but the problem with doing nothing is that then it leaves the status quo, which I believe is untenable. The status quo, the way it is now, we have people trespassing. And we also have no easy legal way to get to enjoy the beach. And for my personal opinion is that public waterfront is crucial to preserve. However you can do it, it's very, very important because it's a limited commodity that is pretty well disappearing. Kaslo is very rich in the amount of waterfront we have, and we're very lucky. But here's an opportunity to actually increase that and provide legal access if we work with the developer. So there is the pro on why don't we just dismiss out of hand because too many people don't want anything to change. I personally believe the status quo is untenable. I think something should, you know, if back in the day when the village sold the land to TNH, back then they'd had a vision 100 years hence that a public beach would be very desirable and a limited commodity. If back then they'd made better decisions, if the village had made better decisions, we wouldn't be where we are today. So we're stuck in a place, I think, where there is no way to guarantee public access to the beach without giving up something. And what we need to give up is the status quo. That's my argument, which is not very helpful, actually. It's just that I appreciate, to me, the main thing is to ensure that there's public access to the beach. And like, this is an interesting difficulty wrinkle, and I've thought about that too, because when boundaries are drawn, it's always from a distance from a water course. When that water course changes. So for me, the development proposal as it stands does have that limitation that it doesn't guarantee in perpetuity public access to the beach, which I think should be like eye on the prize. That's what we need to do as a council. And that's what council 50 years ago failed to foresee. For now, like the purchase and sale agreement that I'm looking at now, I have so many difficulties with it that I'm certainly open to postponing it. But I would rather not postpone it indefinitely, just because I think that takes away our ability to negotiate public access to the beach.
Councilor Bird. All right. Any further discussion? So do you want to go now, Councillor Brown?
I'm happy to have our result presented so I can speak up.
Okay, Councillor Leaflet.
Thank you. I agree with what Councillor Bird is saying, but I also believe that the intent of the motion that is recommended is our intent to advertise the sale of the land. That doesn't mean that there isn't still time for public input, and it doesn't mean that we still can't change our mind, because we are required to advertise sale of land, and we have to give the public an opportunity to respond to that. And it could be that somebody offers to purchase that land themselves, and council will then need to decide whether or not we would sell to QP or what we would do with it. I don't agree that we should postpone this indefinitely either. We have heard from the public, and I understand the pressure that Councillor Bird has also expressed. I respect how everybody feels, but I also feel like we've gotten a lot of information. We've required a lot of information from the developer. We've got legal opinions, and I believe it's our duty to try and find a path through the middle where we can try and represent both sides. And this is a start by advertising the agreement. So I guess I'm speaking against your motion.
Discussion? I see Councillor Lang with his hand up, so we'll go to you, Councillor Brown.
Okay, through the chair. I'd like to quote something, a letter that was sent to us from a community member that I feel is particularly relevant at the moment. An RV park is a serious concern when it comes to the potential increase in tourism that has not first been supported with housing for those that work in the service industry, which are the ones the tourists rely on. These will not bring any permanent residents who can participate in our community at the level that small communities rely on for all of our servicing, whether that be the trail network or one of the many nonprofits that operate based on endless volunteer hours of committed residents. An RV park will create a demand that is already operating on a deficit in terms of employment and community gaps. For me, this is integral. There could be the perception that I am against development. That actually is not true. I respect that this is a piece of private land, and I would like to see an agreement that would be feasible for the proponent as well as the community. I also recognize that we have finite infrastructure and ability to grow in Kaslo, and I think it's integral that we are very mindful in how we choose to develop our community. And a strata title RV park, in my opinion, is not able to be supported by the workforce that we currently have here with the housing issues that we currently have. So I feel like this would more likely create issues down the road, and I feel like that's something that I can't look past. And the strata title is also something that I feel is not in the best interest of our community, based on a very large amount of community engagement. I feel that this is the appropriate thing to do, and that is why I've made my decision.
Councillor Bird.
Last summer, we went for a walk with the owner and one of his advisors. And at that point, he was talking about a campground. And well, I'd seen his map with all of those things, and I figured that was pie in the sky and like a ridiculous number of campsites. But he started kind of giving me the idea that he was thinking that it would be a campsite. And then suddenly I'm thinking, kind of like Mirror Lake, kind of like, well, we need overflow. And so what I realized is, for me, the absolute important thing for us to achieve is, like I said before, a good sized public beach, good access to the beach in perpetuity. And I don't mind a campground. I don't. I'd like to see it virtually not touching that triangle where the lake and the river meets, so that in our development, if there were development restrictions, which in the same way that we say you can't have a house that's higher than 3 stories in Kaslo, say, well, this particular area has to be maybe that's your little wildlife area, because that plan, as it's been presented to us, which did not sound at all like a campground, which was what he verbally said. What is lacking, I think, is a wild area. And if we were to negotiate something that guaranteed public access in perpetuity, a good beachfront, and a good chunk of wild area, and a campground, I mean, that's where I'd like to see some ability to negotiate, which is why the idea of putting it off indefinitely just kind of feels backward.
Councillor Lang. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Brown.
For clarity, through chair, for clarity from staff, does postponing this indefinitely prevent the proponent from coming back with another plan? to present to us. And so that was my understanding too, is that postponing this indefinitely doesn't mean that another alternate plan for a campground or anything that was allowable in a floodplain would not be allowed to happen. It just means the particular plan that was sent to us, which is the strata title with the, I believe, 80 sites and the specific plan, that would be indefinitely postponed in conversation. And were the proponent to come with us, want to work with the village on something that would be more in line with what the village would like to see and the citizens of Kaslo, then I would be very open to talking about a campground. Our campground here in Kaslo is over capacity. It's very, very well used for Jazz Fest. South Beach has been a really great resource to be able to help camping and I can see a path forward where we can find something where more people feel like they're represented in that plan. This plan specifically, I do not see that, which is why I've suggested to postpone this indefinitely.
Councillor Lang, did you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, on all my 12 years or so on council, this might be the most difficult decision that I've ever been asked to make. And I think the easy way to go about it would be to simply deny the application. That would be a popular decision, certainly amongst the people that are attending this meeting. However, recently now we've had 2 legal opinions tendered that bring our OCP into question. And regardless of which way council votes at the end of the day, there's going to be some unhappy people. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not just talking about the proponents, I'm talking about other members of the community that support this proposal. So at this point in time, I think we need to keep the process moving ahead so that we need more information. The legalities of this thing are not clear to me. I'm not a legal expert. And I'm certainly not willing to vote to shut this proposal down at this point in time. Thank you.
Further comments or questions from council? So I'm going to comment that if we postpone indefinitely and you're indicating that the proponent could come back with something else, we've got something before us now that does have built-in negotiation. There are many conditions to the purchase and sale which will start to address some of those things, and the proponent is not going to know where council may be willing to move. If we just shut it down, then we're going to ask them to make a larger investment on something that, again, we might end up in the same place. If we take the opportunity to raise our points with the developer now, that, rather than throwing something else out there, it just says that we really don't want development, because we're saying we don't want to even work with you to try to find something that's a compromise, right? If we cannot continue the conversation now, we've got them at the table and we have been listening. We haven't rushed this. I don't think by any means. There were, issues with change in staff, we've all been understanding of that there has been delays. But even so, we as council have repeatedly gone back and relayed some of the information that we felt was of value that we've gotten from members of the public. And so we continue to come to them and ask them to make amendments, and we negotiated a greater amount of access or beach, right? It was 7 meters, which was what was allowed. We negotiated and got 15. So there are other elements that we all know could be problematic for us. So I think we should see where that goes rather than just saying no. Indefinitely means they could come back with something else, but are we going to take another year for that to work its way through, if they even choose that it's worth it to do that? And Councillor Brown, I saw your hand first.
Through the chair, some clarifying understanding. So first is this, my understanding is that strata title is married to this land transfer. If we agree on the land transfer, are we approving a strata title as well?
Through the chair, the developer would like the land to be subdivided as bare land strata, and that's part of the negotiation. And I think it's been part of their proposal from the start, and then was omitted for about a month and a half through negotiations, but then was reiterated, I think, or at the end of September, early October, that they wanted it as a condition of the development.
So it is in fact married to this. Were we to vote to move forward with this land transfer, then the strata title would be incorporated into that. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Sorry, through the chair, could you ask the question again?
Is the approval of this land transfer married to approval of a strata title? My understanding was that were we to vote for this, that we are giving them a very clear signal that strata title is what we're open-minded to, and that we're notifying the proponent that is something that we're committed to.
Chair, if I understand your question correctly, maybe I should rephrase that. When you say land transfer, you're talking about the purchase and sale agreement?
That's right.
Okay, so if council eventually decides to approve and execute the purchase and sale agreement, then it's on condition that it would be subdivided as bare land strata.
I would also then, like in response, because I do appreciate your comments and recognize that the value of having them at the table now. I have great reservation in attempting to keep them at the table by moving forward with a plan that I don't think is in the best interest of the community. I would again reiterate that we are not killing negotiations by postponing this indefinitely. We are no longer, we're giving them a clear signal that the plan that was given to us is not acceptable. But that does not mean that another alternate plan wouldn't be acceptable to us. So the case that, postponing indefinitely would make it so that we wouldn't be able to find a future solution that might work for everyone, I just don't think is as applicable as it could be. I think that the most important aspects of this are ensuring that if we don't feel like this particular plan was in the best interest, that we would then not approve this plan. Just as if anyone were to send in a development variance permit and we said no to them, they're welcome to come back. I would say that, I would encourage the proponent, were this to be voted on, to find, something to continue a conversation with the village, to look at possibilities that might be more in line with the vision of the community, our OCP, and the village of Kaslo. proposed.
Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, so in reference to, a letter from Ann Malik, where she's talking about the stream protection development permit area. If that is part of the purchase and sale agreement, well, sorry, let me back up there. She makes the point that prior to any subdivision or change of land use, which a purchase and sale agreement initiates, this is where I have confusion, legal confusion. So if we enter into a purchase and sale agreement, and there are all these conditions, some of which a condition might be. So a condition might be 25 rustic camping spots, 20 strata spots, say, and that would be acceptable. Let's work on that basis. But that would eventually, that's the kind of negotiation, say, council could take, which may be something that the developer says, well, that's not a good enough, I can't do a business plan with that. Well, I'm sorry. So Robert has, CAO Baker has made us understand that through the purchase and sale agreement, that is where we can put all these conditions on what kind of development we're looking at. But the purchase and sale agreement, ipso facto, is a subdivision document. It describes how the subdivision goes ahead and who benefits financially, who benefits with the land. That's what it does. That is a subdivision document, even if it's also a purchase and sale. So don't they need a development permit first before we get into this process of limiting things? I just find that I would like a good explanation of why or why not Ms. Malik's letter is valid. She says BC municipal law considers consolidation of lots to be subdivision. And ROCP says that a development permit is required to be submitted prior to subdivision. The development permit is not something we've seen, is it? We've just seen a plan. This is where I figure I'm on shaky ground legally, like.
So I will throw in there, if you wish to make a motion to refer to a future meeting until you get the information on clarity on that item, a referral motion takes precedence over the motion that we've got on the table, and then we can only talk about referral. But if you don't have a comfort level with making a motion either to postpone indefinitely or to make the motion proposed in the staff report, then you could do that if you feel you don't have sufficient information tonight to make a decision either way. So I'll just put that out there. And is there any other discussion from council, or did you?
Would I like to make a referral? So which would be tabling Matt's motion?
No, you would just make a motion to refer it to whatever meeting you choose and that you would like to seek additional information on the points just raised.
Yeah.
Is that, because I know that the referral motion does take precedence over this postponement motion, correct?
So, that's on the table. Just to clarify, the December staff report, I think that's what was referenced, and the a motion to postpone indefinitely is a secondary motion, not intended as a primary motion. So let's just, even though we're not going to change the motion, we need to understand what it is. It's primary motion to postpone indefinitely. It's being used wrong. It's a secondary motion. It's probably, I don't know if we need to amend the motion to make it clearer, but what I think what in essence you're trying to do is decline the proposal. You know, that would be a nice, sound, clean motion. The council declined the proposal. And that would mean that it's done, that council's made a decision and there wouldn't be any reason for it to come back to council. And yet the conversation I'm hearing from council is that you're not necessarily done with it. You're open to finding a way to make something work. It's just not working for some council. It's not working for you right now. So a motion to decline the proposal might not be the motion you want. We'd have to defer to our corporate officer here to determine whether it makes sense to proceed with a vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely, or if it makes sense to amend in some way with a recommendation of another councillor.
Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, as the person who put the motion forward, that's why I tried to say with the alternate motion to be voted upon, council does not approve of the land transfer. I wasn't sure which order that goes in. So I suppose then the motion would be council does not approve of the land transfer. And were there to be a secondary motion.
The chair, to be clear, I think the motion would be to decline the proposal.
Okay.
If I can, I don't want to put words into council's mouth at all. I just think the cleanest verbiage would be to decline the proposal. If that's not the intent of council here, then you need to defer to the corporate officer to determine a way to amend it to do what you want it to do.
Through the chair.
Councillor Brown?
Jumping in.
Yeah.
Does that mean if he were to make that motion, that this motion, you don't retreat, you don't take away your motion, you just defeat the motion and then make a new motion?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that with the corporate officer, because it's not just a friendly, it's not just a simple amendment, it's totally different.
Yeah, so the motion that's on the table, you can have a motion to postpone indefinitely as your new motion, that's fine, but it can also be a secondary motion, so it's something that when it refers to that section of the procedures bylaw that talks about those, once you have a new motion on the floor and somebody wants to propose that it be postponed indefinitely, we can also do it as a main motion. And so perhaps I misunderstood the intent. My understanding of your intent was that you wanted all discussion of this to cease forever. But now hearing the conversation that's come out, it sounds like, as CIO Baker said, there's perhaps an opening for the conversation to continue, but there are definitely some parts that you are seeking to have put a stop to at this point. And that is the intent of your motion. So
To clarify, the intent of my motion is to, and I'm happy to use the CAO word to decline the offer. And yeah, we're another offer to come, and that would be separate. But my motion is to decline this offer.
So, but the motion that's on the table belongs to the table now, so. So are we comfortable with calling the question? Because if I call the question, that ceases debate on this motion. So, and seeing no further discussion, or Councillor Lang, I see you are unmuted. Did you have further discussion?
No, sorry, Mayor. I should be muted.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing you. All right, so on the motion to postpone indefinitely. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, so that motion is defeated. Do we have an alternate motion that a member of council would like to put forward? Councillor Bird?
Along the lines of, through the chair, I'm sorry, along the lines of what CAO Baker suggested, I'd like to make a motion that we decline the proposal that we've been offered for that land and for the swap and sale of village land, that we decline the proposal as presented.
For a quick recess,
Yes.
I think that it would be helpful if we could, if staff could just spend a minute before, to avoid, like, to make sure that we get the right motion
Okay.
on the table. So if we
Okay.
can just have a 5-minute recess.
Yeah.
So we could use that.
Okay.
How long?
Okay. So then I will call for a recess so we can take a break, use the washroom if we need. All right, so we are out of recess. So I'm going to go to staff because they've been conferring and go ahead, CO Baker.
Larry, do it. So if no staff are listening intently, and if we understand correctly, council's just, there's a motion on the table to basically cease negotiations on the purchase and sale agreement, and it did not pass. So it sounds like council's still at the negotiation table. And some of the conversation that we've heard, like how many RV pads could there be? Could some of them be for camping on the weekend versus, you know, them being, have a permanent trailer there, so to speak? As well as questions about at what point does the development permit application get triggered? Is it at the time of lot consolidation, or is it at the time of subdivision? So all of those things that you're talking about negotiating would be part of the finalization of the purchase and sale agreement, or part of that purchase and sale agreement process. So if you want to put constraints or restrictions on the RV park, the Bearland Strata RV park, then you do that within the processes that are conditions of the purchase and sale agreement. The answer to the question, when does the development permit application need to be submitted to the village? It's either at the time of lot consolidation or at the time of subdivision. And on page, I think it's 1 of the land development process, it identifies that some clarification from our lawyer is needed to figure out exactly at what point does it make sense to occur in this case. But it assumes that you're going to, I would say it's somewhat immaterial. If you get to the point where you're considering a development permit application, it's because you've already proceeded you've already proceeded with the purchase and sale agreement. So just wanted to touch on your comment there, Councillor Bird, about when do we do development permit? It's part of the process that you would follow. It might happen at lot consolidation, it might happen at subdivision. Either way, it's happening because you've agreed to proceed with the purchase and sale of the lands. And so what council is being asked right now is, if you're not going to stop negotiation and inform the developer that you're rejecting the proposal completely and you're done with negotiating the purchase and sale agreement, if that's not what you're trying or your intent right now, if you want to stay at the table and continue to negotiate, then you have the option right now to issue notice to the public of your intention to dispose of land. That'll give you feedback. And then you can decide whether you want to enter into the purchase and sale agreement. If there are any conditions that you want added to the purchase and sale agreement, those would be really important to know tonight. And staff can then identify that's already a condition that's in there, such as how many RV sites, and that some are for overnight use and some are permanent, so to speak, or when does the development permit application happen? That's all that's already a condition that's in the purchase and sale agreement. So what staff would encourage council to do is identify what conditions do you want added. Are there any?
Councillor Hurd?
Off the top of my head through the chair, sorry. Yeah, I would like to be able to look at the map of the area and say, this is just me. This is what I would like is, this is wild. Leave it untouched, or else I ask, get a qualified environmental, someone who knows the native plants, and so a restoring area, an area that should be restored, and it's basically for wildlife or kids walking through the brush. That's that kind of thing. I would also limit my own thing would be to limit to 20, the number of RVs that were strata, and that the rest be as near as possible, no trace camping, which to some extent, our own campground is kind of like that as soon as the campers are gone, they got some picnic tables, they've got a few water stands. But they don't have carved out semi-impermeable pads. But I kind of resent having to come up with all of this on the spot. It's just the way I've been thinking. And my point through all of this too is that I think if the developer knew that there was some kind of a plan that we would actually support, that would be a much more fruitful way of negotiating this, rather than this is what he wants, and we're gonna negotiate down the line. I feel like I'm negotiating in bad faith if I go for the purchase and sale agreement, knowing that I'm not at all interested in his plan, but I'd open to a lighter footprint kind of plan, but not that one. So I feel he should know that now, and we should have some back and forth about that prior. I recognize your point, and I understand all of these things can be imposed later, but rather than imposing restrictions that come from my head or anybody on council, anything that we agree on, rather than imposing it later, why can't we negotiate that at the front end?
Did you have a response, or can I see Councillor Leafwood has a question? Okay, Councillor Leafwood? No, she knows, she's trying to unmute. There we go.
I was unmuted. Okay, sorry. Made a motion, which I thought was to decline the sale, and then we started talking about CAO Baker. So where are we at with Erica's motion?
It was Councillor Brown's motion, I believe. Oh, okay. So sorry, Councillor Bird's motion. So you just want to Do you want it read back?
Yeah, like I don't think there was a seconder, but I just like, is the motion,
Oh, did we not have a
she
seconder?
made it and then,
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. I thought we had somebody who was seconding that.
No,
Okay,
that's why I called for the recess, to make sure that we got the wording of the motion right before the
Okay.
discussion started.
sorry. All
okay,
right. So
then
can we
my question,
and then read back, so, and see if we have a seconder for that motion.
You want to give me the intent of your motion in general terms?
The council would like to give notice of that the proposal from the developer will not be supported.
Do you want to be specific about the aspects that are not going to be supported?
100% strata title subdivision, and the number is too high. And I don't see the need for a boat launch right away.
I'd like to make a motion for referral. Because I don't feel qualified tonight to start going back and going through it again and coming up with things on the fly, as Councillor Bird said. You know, I think there's still parts of the current agreement that could work, but I think we need time to digest them. So could I refer this to the next council meeting so we've all had a chance to come up with things that we do want in the sale agreement?
If you can get a seconder for the referral motion, then that, okay, are you seconding that, Councillor Lang? Okay. So on referral only, yeah. So is there discussion on referral? On the merits of referral? On the merit of referral?
So referral means to the next meeting?
That's where, I think that's what Councillor Leafwood said, was to the next meeting, yeah. And, no further discussion on referral. I'll call the question on referral. All those in favor? Okay. That motion passes. So then that takes us then to our next item, which is the Disaster Resilience Investment Fund grant application. Want to speak to this at all, CEO Baker, or just can I just read the recommendation? Okay. So the recommendation is that the village submit a funding application for up to $150,000 for the Disaster Resilience Investment Fund for enhancing Kaslo's resilience to flooding and geohazards, and to commit to funding any cost overruns as detailed in the staff report titled DRIF grant application dated January 22nd, 2025. Moved by Councillor Leafwood, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? And the Wild Safe BC application. So the recommendation is that the village of Kaslo contribute $3,000 towards the delivery of the 2025 Wild Safe BC program for the area. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And the 2025 Trans Rockies event. The recommendation is that the exemption from the noise control bylaw be granted to Trans Rockies Incorporated for their event on July 10th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And appointment of corporate officer. Recommendation is that Robert Baker be appointed as corporate officer for the Village of Kaslo effective February 1st, 2025. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And Canada Post review. Recommendation is that the Village of Kaslo provide input to the Industrial Inquiry Commission on Canada Post in the form of a written submission in support of public postal service. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. And did you have discussion, Councillor Leafwood?
Sorry, it was actually about the Trans Rockies. Just to clarify that last year they asked for the noise exemption, and it was supposed to start at 7, but it actually started much earlier than that. So there were some people that live in that area that were kind of rudely woken up because it started much earlier than 7 o'clock.
So they've requested that time, so staff will convey that 7 o'clock is when the variance is for. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that. So on the current motion about the Canada Post issue.
No discussion, sorry.
Okay. So then so everyone in the room was in favor, and it was just a question, are you in favor as well or opposed? In favor, okay. All right. So we have no late items. So the recommendation is that in accordance with section 91A, part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following: B, acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and that persons other than council members and municipal officers be excluded from the meeting. Moved by Councillor Bird, second by Councillor Leafwood. All those in favor? Carried. All right. So we'll give you a few moments to clear the room.